Welcome to CCI Drive Time, the podcast for vended laundry distributors. I'm Steve with CCI, using your drive time to cover laundromat trends, payment systems, and practical topics you can use in the field. Today, I got to sit down with Madison Dang with Elite Business Investments out of Southern California and learn a little bit about the Southern California market, get a chance to talk about some of the opportunities that exist out there, what some of the challenges are, and just get a chance to kind of discuss where we think the distribution business is headed moving forward. So I hope you enjoy listening to this as much as I enjoyed discussing these topics with Madison. Here we go. Madison.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm good, Steve. How are you?
I'm great. I know we chatted a little bit before we got the record button going here. Thank you again for joining me here today. It's always great to catch up. I haven't seen you in a while. You and I talked about, I've known your parents for a long time, with Elite Business Investments going back many, many years. And I always enjoyed the time that I had. They're the nicest people. And I'm so glad to see another generation enter this industry, frankly. I know you're not new to it, but in the scheme of when I look at the age across most distributorships, when I look across the country, and I've had the privilege to visit a lot of distributors, I'm always excited to see a little bit younger generation. We talked about my son joining a few minutes ago, another young guy that's decided he wants to be in this business too. And so, that gives us a lot of hope about distribution in general, the laundry market and where things are going. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation to learn a little bit more about what's happening, your viewpoint on Southern California and distribution in general. But before we get there, why don't you just tell me a little bit about Elite and kind of like what your role is there?
Sure. Yeah. Company's been in business since 2008. This is a family-run business, just like CCI. It's my parents and I, and then 7 other salespeople in our company. So, my role, I'm the VP of the company, and then I'm also the principal broker. So I handle all the day-to-days on the sales team. I handle training, kind of overseeing every transaction. We are truly a two-headed monster in the sense that we do brokerage, but we also do distribution. We're doing build-outs, so on and so forth. So just my role, I'm just overseeing all these deals, making sure we've got a clean deal, that both buyer and seller are happy, and so on and so forth. Yeah,
great. And so how long have you been working with your folks at Elite?
Coming up on, this is my 11th year in the company.
11th year. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, like I said, you're not new to this business, but you're one of the younger ones for sure still. So hold on to that. I was one of the young ones 25 years ago.
Yeah, I want to maintain my youth. I want to maintain it
absolutely,
as much as possible.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's great. And so I'm curious, and I always like to look at what's a little bit unique between different distributorships. And I find that some distributors are builders, like they just build new stores and that's what they focus on. Other distributors are equipment, just strictly equipment. They just want to sell equipment and they do a lot of retools and remodels and stuff like that, but really on the equipment side. And then you kind of come in because I think you do a little bit of everything, but you also have this brokerage side of things. And I think that's something that you guys kind of excel at. So what percentage would you say of your business is brokerage versus kind of more traditional distribution side of things?
Yeah, I'd say we're probably at like a 40% brokerage and then 60% equipment. Being that we just signed our deal with Laundromats and we're now selling Laundromat equipment, we've definitely seen an uptick in our equipment sales. And just the market right now in Southern California for brokerage is just a little tricky. A lot of demand, not a lot of supply at the moment.
I'm seeing that in a lot of places too. I don't think it's unique to Southern California. And, if you're, on any of the social channels, and I'm sure we're always just kind of observing, it's like every day there's somebody who goes, I want a store in Minnesota. I want a store in Illinois. I want a store in Southern California. It's like, great. Who doesn't want one? It seems like nowadays it's like, you got to find the needle in the haystack here to get the good deal. Yeah.
Yeah, we get a lot of inquiries on a daily basis. We put out a listing on, BizBen, BizBuySell, and we'll get,
Hmm.
I don't know, 40 to 50 phone calls between every few days.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
finding a qualified lead is, we could take all the phone calls we want, but being financially qualified for the deal is a whole nother thing. So, like I
Sure.
said, a lot of demand, but
Hmm.
very short supply, and
Yeah. The
yeah,
inventory is
we
tough.
we got to
Yeah.
do a lot of filtering on our end.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. Um, let's get into a little bit about, what you've seen. You said you're 11 years into working with your folks and being in this business at that point. So you've seen quite a bit. Tell me what
Yeah.
you think, what has changed in the last 10 years in your view? And, I guess we could go on for hours about just the things that have changed,
Mhm.
but what has stood out to you as the biggest changes recently?
Yeah, so this is funny because I just got asked this by one of my clients that's been in the business for quite a while. So the way I answered it was pretty simple. I've been seeing a big tech change, and
Mm,
for me, I enjoy that. For being a younger generation, that's something that
hmm.
I enjoy seeing. I think the days of just being a totally coin op store, I think those days are going to be dwindling down pretty soon.
Sure.
But part of this also is I'm seeing a younger generation. I mean, people of my age getting into the business. It's a very different investment pool that's coming into the business now. So
Hmm.
we're also getting a lot of private equity and VCs getting into it, which
Hmm.
you know
Yeah,
has its benefits, sometimes doesn't. Just to be candid, but um,
sure.
so it's definitely changed over the last. I would say just over the last 5 or 6 years. There's been a big
Yeah.
shift.
Yeah, I'll echo all of those things. I think we're seeing the same thing, not obviously just in California here, but everywhere. Yeah, and you can have an opinion, whether or not some of the bigger money that comes in is good or bad for the industry. I think it's just a matter of how we decide to navigate working with these clients, maybe a little bit differently. But yeah, that's very good. What you we talked a little bit about inventory. Is that the biggest challenge that you're facing right now? Are there other challenges maybe that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, inventory would probably be the number one thing. I think the other
Hmm.
hard part is just financing is pretty tricky right
Mm,
now.
mm,
Lending, I would just say post COVID has gotten definitely tighter. So, entry into the business from a down payment perspective has definitely
hmm.
changed, and that number has increased. That percentage to get in has increased, specifically
Yeah.
for the first time buyer. And for us, we thrive on first time buyers. We love working with first time buyers because if we have a good successful deal, that becomes a multi store owner for us.
Sure.
But again, I'd say those are the two probably tough parts right now is this inventory and financing. But we
Hmm.
see that there's been some leniency on the financing side. Depending on the investor. But yeah,
Sure.
those are the two.
Interesting, interesting. You talked a little bit about technology as some things that you're seeing as some of the changes in there. And when you say that, are you saying that your investors are expecting more out of the technology, or you're just seeing more technology be available? Can you expand a little bit about what you mean by
Yeah.
that when you say tech? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a combo of the two right there,
Mm,
that investors are kind of expecting more technology into the business, but then I'm also seeing more of a demand for technology. I'm also seeing it from just the end user side that they are looking
mm,
for a payment system, right? That if you've got a 90-pound washer and you're charging $13 and you got to watch a
yeah.
little lady put $13 in quarters, that's pretty unbearable to watch.
Yeah.
So seeing, whether it's a CCI system or a QR code system, whatever it may
Sure.
be, just something to ease the customer's experience. I think that's what
Hmm.
investors are really getting into now is just streamlining the customer experience.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously and this is my world, is talking about payment. And for years it seemed like there was this this focus on the idea that, well, payment systems are for the owners. You know what I mean? That this is for the operator more than, it's not what the retail customer wants. It's what the owner wants. And here's the first thing that you say is that it's the retail customer that wants this. And here's the reason why. It's because the machines are not getting any smaller. You know, they only seem to get bigger. I mean, you know, I've seen 130-pound washers in stores. I mean, they're vending for $20, you know, in some markets. I mean, could you imagine, you know, literally taking a $20 bill to a change machine, getting $20 a quarter, and somehow carrying those over, and, you know, over the next 4 or 5 minutes, loading those quarters into a machine? Or, you know, maybe they have dollar coins, but that even seems like a nightmare. And at the end of the day, sorting coins out of a box. But, you know, we live in, you know, 2026, and here we are. But I think you're right. I think what we're seeing is that there's an expectation, not just by investors and store owners, but you know, we're all retail customers in some place. We have expectations of what we want to see. I can't imagine going to a gas station. I can't use my credit card. I mean, I don't, you know, not being able to pull plastic out to use that. I don't even remember the last time I went inside a gas station, let alone, you know, thinking I had to go and bring cash into a gas station. So the retail customer is ultimately demanding a lot of this. And it sounds like you're seeing the same thing.
Yeah, and like a good way to, I guess, for us, the narrative has really shifted. It used to be, like you said, for the operator, right? The narrative was, you know, maintain your float and reduce your collection times. But it was never about the end user. It was never about, let's make this a convenience for the end user. It was all about operator standpoint. Whereas now it's shifted. Like I just took a call this morning for one of our listings, and their version of some CapEx, or, you know, capital investment into the business, was, can we put a payment system in there?
Wow.
And so that is really the shift, right? Is now investors are looking at the value of a payment system and what that could do for the business. So yeah, that's, for me, it's great, because this is, one, it's a great selling point, but two, it's giving me peace of mind that this next wave pool of investors, they get it, which is going to make the tech
thinking
easy.
about it the right way here. They're thinking about operating it the way retail customers want. And you know that even, you know, the float is also good stuff. All of the things that payment system companies like myself have been touting for years, those are all still good stuff. But we do that, I think, many times because we're trying to justify the investment. We know this is an investment involved in this technology. So we're trying to find ways to, you know, to justify the investment, and telling them, well, your customers want it, doesn't have the same ROI as saying, well, there's this float and there's this penny incremental pricing, and there, you know, there's all these things that you can do. But now that the customers are demanding it, and the investors, like you said, are saying, I can't imagine a more modern young investor says, I want to be in the laundromat business, and I can't wait to go pull quarters out of a machine.
Exactly. Yep. I mean, every one of them has been, at least like my most recent investors that I'm working with, they're talking about all the right things, which is like time of day pricing, you know, having running promotions, discounts, you know, doing text blasts for customers, so on and so forth. So yeah, it's nice to see this new wave, because I don't know, 5 years ago, we definitely weren't having these kind of conversations. Sure. It was much different.
That's good to hear. Certainly from my perspective, that's great to hear. You talk about all the calls that you guys get because you have listings, and you're marketing yourselves, you know, in a positive and an aggressive way. What kind of advice are you giving people that are just starting out in the industry? And I realize you've got probably, you know, a high percentage of people that just are never going to get into this business, at least not with their current situation. This is a high capital investment, but those that are generally qualified, you're like, okay, they're a candidate for this. You know, what is generally your advice for someone trying to get into this?
Yeah. Take due diligence very seriously. I mean, really put an emphasis on it. As much as we are experts in this industry, we tell them not to rely on us, right? Conduct your own due diligence, do your own inspections. We'll hold their hand through the entire process. But I don't know, for me, I try to be very transparent with all my clients that, look, no deal is going to be perfect. There's going to be bumps in the road. And it really, as an investor, you just need to be able to tackle those. And because that's how it's going to be when you own a laundromat. It's not a perfect ownership, right? You're going to have a flood. Machines are going to break down. So, anyways, I guess as a piece of advice, I tell them to take their time
Mm-hmm.
in getting into this, because there's times when they have money and they just want to rush to deploy money. They see a deal
Mm-hmm.
that looks good on paper, but they haven't really done the research on what that time allocation is going to look like for them. Um,
Right.
I'm sure you know this. We have a lot of social media people out there
Yeah.
that are saying, "Oh, passive income business, 100% seller financing, all these different things." Right? It's maybe true in some places, but not all places. And this is not one of those places that we can really structure those
Sure.
deals. So,
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is what the rest of outside of our, well, in our industry too, we call these influencers, right? These
yeah,
influencers, and I think they're self-proclaimed in some ways. Some of them can very much be that, and it's always made me a little bit uncomfortable because I also come from a distribution background. It's no surprise we have a distribution business in Chicago. My brother runs it, and so I'm intimately aware of all the challenges that go into, but not just that. And I see it in you too, is the investment that you make as a distributor into your customers, because you're thinking about them being successful, because that does mean that store number 2 is coming and store number 3 is coming someday. And if you do a good job and you get them launched appropriately, the years of relationship that's going to return in business to you and to him, and everybody's going to be happy and successful. I mean, that's the goal. That's why
yeah,
due diligence is important, getting them set up in the right place and all those things. And what makes me nervous about some of the influencers that are providing this advice is that their motivations are not the same. The advice, their motivations are likely to offer a program, a
mm,
book,
yep,
a guide of some kind, right? But
yep,
and I'm not saying that there's no good advice in there, but you got to remember where the motivations are. And I think that for the investor out there, they have to realize that your motivation is them being successful, because you're not looking at one store, you're looking at them being a multi-store owner, and
correct.
and nobody's getting rich selling one guy one store with equipment. That just doesn't
Exactly.
that doesn't happen. It's selling that guy 5 stores, and
Yep,
you need 100 people that are doing that, and
exactly.
so your investment into this industry as a general is because you need the industry to be healthy, and then you need the investor to have a healthy experience through
Yep,
this and be successful throughout the way. And that's the disconnect, when people go on Facebook and, they get sold courses or things like that. And again,
yeah,
everyone has the right to make money, and everyone has the right to
yep,
offer their wares. And I'm a capitalist. I'm sure you are as well.
yep,
But when we talk about the amount of investment required to
hmm
open a laundry, you need to talk to a real person in that market who's done it many
correct.
times before.
Yeah,
and
because
and yeah.
we get tons of investors that go, "Oh, I have a private consultant," and I
Yes.
go, I
Oh,
go,
great.
"Great, no problem. Where?"
Yeah.
"Oh,
Yeah.
they're in Florida." Well, this deal's in
Yes.
Southern California, so
Yeah.
Florida market, LA market, two wildly
Mm,
different markets.
for
And the
sure.
way that they're going to negotiate a deal, negotiate a lease, is going to be different than how we're going to negotiate a deal and a lease. The comps just they will never match.
Right.
And so, yeah, there's a ton of value in that, just not just working with me or my company, but any agency that specializes in this industry that's local, because
Hmm.
we have a vested interest, like you said, we have a vested
That's
interest
right.
for our clients to succeed. Because
That's right.
if they succeed, we succeed, and our reputation is on the line for every deal. Whereas a consultant,
Correct.
if that client fails, they're not really held liable. They get their one
Right.
time payment, and they're kind of off into the moon at that point.
Hmm. Again, just to continue, not to beat a dead horse here, but I've worked with distributors, and I would even say that Laundry Concepts in Chicago is a good example of this. Is that you can be really successful as a distributor by aligning yourself with a good investor, that has obviously got to have some of the right means to be able to do things, that executes correctly, but works with you and trusts you in a way that one investor is, in getting a handful of those, makes that distribution business thrive.
Yep.
And it's really a symbiotic relationship in that way. And they become friends almost with these folks. It's not just great, you bought a car and I never see that dealer again. It's a very different kind of relationship. And so again, seeing, I've already said it once, but seeing younger people join this industry that recognize the relationship side of this is I hate to say it, refreshing, because one of the things that has become a bit of a distraction, I believe, and I get this, dealers need to sell what they can, is this idea of, if you're going to be a distributor, then be a consultant. Don't just be a catalog. You can just, here's a catalog. Let me open this up and you just choose whatever it is you want on here, and then I'll place the order. I mean, it's like, well, I go to Amazon and choose what I want off of there. Thank goodness you can't buy commercial laundry equipment on Amazon, but at the same time, let's not let that happen. You know what I mean? As stewards of this industry. So, that's what we are. We're consultants more than anything else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. You have a sense of where you think, we spent a little time talking about it already, but how do you think the role of the distributor is going to evolve? Do you see it changing? Do you want it to change? Do you see where, the industry can do better from the you're a distributor. What can distributors do better? What do you see changes coming?
Yeah. I mean, I think we were all kind of seeing it with manufacturers, taking over some distributors.
Yeah.
I'm biased because I am a distributor, so I don't like I don't like that direction.
Sure.
Again, I'm biased because we are a small mom and pop type business that puts a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this company. So yes, going up against a manufacturer on a deal is not very fun, especially when they can price gouge us on pretty much everything. I don't know if that's sustainable though. That's just the key. So we're really forecasting a pretty big future here. So I really don't know if it's sustainable, but I don't know. It's tough. I guess on my opinion, I'm not the biggest fan of where it's headed right now.
Yeah. I'll echo that. And one of the things, if we're getting to a theme here, I think we're finding a theme is that what I hear about some of the distribution businesses that have been acquired, let's say by their manufacturing partner, or we've seen some other larger distribution groups, start to acquire and become larger and larger in the markets, is that there's this lack of, there's nobody to give the business to. It's like my father, was in this industry and he retired, and I'm in the industry now. My son has joined the industry. So there's this legacy that you can see. There's a path for the business to continue to go with a level of, respect that the business deserves, and an understanding of the core tenets of that business. And it's kind of opened up a little bit of an opportunity for these acquisitions. And I think maybe some of the manufacturers have been nervous about the idea that their distribution network is basically evaporating, or could evaporate. I'm not saying it happened yet, but they're kind of jumping the gun on the fact that it could evaporate. But this idea of whether or not they can sustain at the price points that they may be trying to sell at, I don't think they can, because there's a lot of work that goes into the distribution layer of this, and you don't eliminate that work just because you eliminated the markup that comes along with that layer of it, and it may take a little time, but if you were to ask me, I would say that, there's a disruption in that for a while, and then there'll be a hard demand for consultancy to come back. And I think so companies like yours that is kind of banking on that and banking towards the future of that are really well positioned. Yeah.
We're staying put.
Good for you. Good for you. Think back on, is there something you wish you had known earlier in your career? Maybe whether it's a trait, as a piece of knowledge that you wish you'd known earlier that you learned later in your career here.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say I really wish I maybe took on a little bit more of a. Oh man, that's a good question. I think my biggest regret was not putting an emphasis on marketing early in my career. And I wish I put more of a focus on that and maybe taken some classes, networked, whatever it may have been. I'm very old school style marketing where I'm just boots on the ground. I go survey, pass out flyers door to door. I've been doing that for 11 years now. And I'm pretty late to the wave of digital marketing. And I think that's something that I wish that just for me personally, that I had jumped on earlier. So, and then it's also just in line with my company, right? We being a mom and pop, a smaller company, we again are very grassroots style marketing, for us. So they're mainly on the marketing side.
I think you're right. You're not alone, and I'll even put us into that into that same category of we could have done a better job early on. And if I'll say that if there's anything about the new money that maybe has joined this industry, is it does kind of wake you up a little bit to say, oh, you know what, I can do that too. And I don't know why I never did that before, but it kind of makes you go back and say we should spend a little more on marketing, whether it be money or time. Both of them you need to see, or both of them are costs associated with them. And so I'll give credit where credit's due there, that the idea of telling folks what we do and doing a better job of communicating what we can do to help you is something that I think most distributors have struggled with, and you're certainly not alone. It's a great observation. I'd love to circle back a little bit on that, because we're a payment system company. This is what we do, and I know that you guys, you've already talked about the technology. What do you like to see customers do? We sell it all. We sell hybrid. We sell card only. We have an app. We can do whatever really any investor wants. But forget my product line. I'm curious, when you're talking to somebody, do you go all in card only? Do you go and no, it should be hybrid with an app, coin with loyalty card? There's so many different variations now that you can do on the technology side. What are you suggesting people do, or does it change based on the investor?
Yeah, I'm pretty much solely hybrid.
Okay.
There is a
coin
there's
and
still a,
something else. Yeah.
There is still a market for coin op. Okay, there is still that baby boomer generation that they just refuse to use a debit or credit card app, or they don't even know how to use Apple Pay. So I still like to be able to appeal to that demographic and that customer base, but for the future of the store, because it's not about just when they're purchasing the store, it's about what's 5 to 10, 15 years from now. That hybrid system, eventually you can just convert it into an all card. So the goal is you keep the coin in there and begin the conversion day one. And then at some point you just phase out the coin.
Right. So. Yeah, that's excellent. In fact, we just did that, I would say within the last 2 years, to a store not far from our office here that had one of our fast card product, which was a hybrid coin and credit card. And what is interesting about taking that approach, we're like, I don't want to eliminate coin quite yet. I'm not sure, my customers are ready for that. I already got some percentage of customers that really want to continue to use, coin. Is this idea is that the reporting that you ultimately get out of these systems will basically tell you when it's time to do it. It's like if you have 80% of your customers paying with coin, well, you're not going to pull those coin mechanisms off those machines all that fast. But when you start seeing that percentage shift, and at that store, we got it under 20%. I mean, well under 20% we're using coin still. And we're like, God, is that last 15% doing it out of habit? And if we just said you had to use the card now, would we really lose that 15%? And I think we ended up with enough confidence there to say we're not going to lose all 15% of that. There might be a little shake up it for a few customers, but our experience has generally been that the store's revenue really is unimpacted at that point, when you see that. And so having some of the peace of mind that, I can do the hybrid, and then I can use the data that's in front of me, not just what people are telling me over the attendance or whatever about what people want. I'm using the data of what they choose to use to make the decision of when I'm going to pull the quarter plug, if ever, if you ever need to.
Yep. So the way we did it with one of the locations, we had an F2 system in there. It was just a hybrid. Then we went from just taking debit credit card at the at the machine to then we installed a kiosk, and then that began the conversion. It was really when we took the step up to the kiosk, and we were still accepting coin. We now just added a layer of loyalty card into the mix. And so once we got loyalty card into the mix, that's where we saw the coin numbers start to go down. Card use went up. We were offering promotions. It was, put $20 in, get X amount on top. Right. And that was really the turning point for the store. But we waited for the kiosk when we saw almost let's say like a 50-50 to 60-40 split. Because it was really predominantly a coin store. It's always from the beginning. And then we started to see that coin number go down and then card usage go up. And then we decided on the kiosk at that point.
Yeah, that's a great way to approach it. And, we've seen that too, that you can a la carte this, you can start with some card readers on your big machines, because again, who wants to put $15 in a 90-pound washer? and then, so maybe start there. And then you're going to find that a couple of your customers are going to say, well, what about the 50-pound washers? And, I'd really like, be nice to do the dryers because I'm pulling them out of the 90 and going to a dryer. And so you kind of let the retail customer tell you where to put the next card reader, essentially.
Right.
And then step 2 is, like you said, maybe a loyalty card will work. I'll put a kiosk in there and see what happens. And then you really start to get some good data out of the system and make those determinations of what to do next. So yeah, that's great. I love hearing the story. Well, excellent. Madison, as a sense of just keeping things in good time, I'd love to kind of wrap things up, but I'd love for you to share a little bit about how people can learn more about Elite and get a hold of you if they're interested in a store in the market. We are focused on distributors, but I think we get people listening that are probably interested in what you do and how they can work with you. Can you share a little bit about how to get in touch with you and so on?
Absolutely. We have a website, www.elite-biz.com. All of our contact information is on there. Every one of our emails, anybody on our sales team, they can send an email right to us. And then on our socials, we got our Elite Business Investments social page, and then all of our personal pages are kind of linked towards it. Perfect.
Well, Madison, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you sharing, and I appreciate you being so candid with your knowledge. And it's been great speaking with you. Thanks a bunch, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.